Welcome to Riding in the Weeds. You are here with Ginny and Tash, and this is episode 87. We are pretty excited because we are not that far away from episode 100, which kind of actually flows into the conversation we're going to have today. So today's conversation is basically titled, Are You Actually Lost? And we're really just going to dive right on in here because I've got a story to tell. I've got a couple of stories to tell, and we're just going to flesh them out as we go. And so, as I say, are you really lost? Are you really stuck? And how to know when you are, and if you are, how to fix it. And if you aren't, how to just be where you are in the moment and enjoy the journey. So I am Natasha Lockey. I am a mountain bike life performance coach. I am all about helping you find your way. And this podcast is about normalizing the concept of, like, we get stuck in the weeds, but it doesn't mean we have to stay there. And it's actually quite easy to get out. It's just as easy as it is to get in, to be quite honest with you. It sometimes doesn't feel like it, but it really is. And as we're going along, if this episode speaks to you and you think somebody would benefit from it, please share. Because when we share something, we show someone that we are thinking about them, and you're also sharing a little bit of love and helping other people out as we go along. I am here with my amazing co-host, Ginny, who I'm going to let introduce herself.
Yeah, I'm Ginny Brandon. I'm an animal communicator and energy healer for animals and their people too. And if you are looking to get unstuck in your relationship with your pets, then that would be a great reason to connect together, and we can get you all back to harmony and a little more happiness together.
Awesome. All right. So this whole episode is really sparked from, on Sunday, I was feeling frustrated. Maybe not frustrated. I was feeling a little lost. I was feeling a little bit lonely. I was feeling a bit sad. But honestly, what I was really feeling was a lack of adrenaline. I have not been able to ride my bicycle. I have not been on a snowboard. I have not been on a surfboard. It's been months, and I don't actually know the last time in my life that I have been not in action in one of these ways for so long. The biggest excitement I get is going for a walk with my dog, and even though I'm on this gorgeous river, I can't actually even walk along the river because of the frozenness of it. I don't want to encourage Tiaki to be that close to the river because I don't want him to try and walk out onto the ice and fall into it. So we're kind of stuck, and we're quite often on the same path. And I don't like that. I don't like to walk in the same direction there and back. I like to do a loop. I know this about myself, but I'm really seeing this about myself. Like, doing the same walk, the same thing day after day is not me. I really like to mix things up. So I was feeling the sense of being lost and wondering, did I make the wrong decision? Should I be doing something else? What is going on? So I went out for a walk. And I'm on this property. It's almost 400 acres big. And as the snow's melting back, I was like, you know what? I'm going to just go left. And I wandered into the bushes. I was following a deer trail. And my purpose was to see how lost I could get myself and explore a piece of the property that I've never been on before. And as I was wandering around, what I really realized was that on this property, there's actually no way to really get lost. Unless you purposely walk around in circles, you can't get lost because it's on a peninsula. The railroad goes by and that bounds the peninsula. So if you go in one direction, you're going to hit the railroad tracks and then you've hit the boundary. If you go in the other direction, you're either going to hit one of our skitter roads or you're going to run into the river, which means then you can follow the river back. And I was leaving a message for Ginny, and I was like, what's really interesting about this is that because there are boundaries, I can't get lost. And that's very similar to life. If you have standards, if you have a overall vision or goal for your life, even when you feel like you're walking around in circles, if you just take a left turn or a right turn or walk straight ahead, you will generally find yourself back. You'll hit the boundaries, right? And so then you can get yourself unstuck and you can move forward. And just to kind of wrap up my little story intro here, as I was leaving the message for Ginny, I like standing there and I heard the train coming. I was like, okay, I wonder where are the train tracks? And literally like maybe 100 meters in front of me, the train goes straight by. And I couldn't see the train tracks from where I was standing, but I was walking straight towards them. And had I taken a left or a right or turned around and gone in the opposite directions, I would have completely missed the train tracks because I couldn't see them from where I was, but they were really right there in front of me. So I'm going to let Ginny unpack this.
Yeah, I was laughing so much listening to your story because you left me the voice message on Messenger, and I just realized how much your description and your experience really does mirror the things we go through in life. And it's a known fact that when you are out in the wilderness in an area you're unfamiliar with, it is very easy to get lost. I mean, how often do you hear of people hiking and they get lost? Like, it's
Absolutely
not difficult, you know? So the boundaries are important. But the part that I love the most about your story, though, was the fact that the train tracks were so much closer than you realized, but yet you still couldn't see them.
Yeah.
In a thawing landscape where you're starting to have nothing but brown because nothing's green, train tracks are brown and gray and they match the environment. So there's nothing to set you off to indicate, oh, there it is. There's no contrast or anything to show you where you are. And I was just laughing listening to your message because I'm like, how often is that our experience? That we're working on a goal and we're trying and trying and trying and it feels like we're not getting anywhere. And then all of a sudden it's like, ta-da, it happens. Everything comes together and there it is, whatever we've been striving for. But yet, how often do we quit? How often do we get discouraged? How often do we think we're really lost, that we're not making progress, that things are not going our way, that it's not right, it should be here already, I can't find it, what's going on? And I had to laugh because I think really the big message behind that is just keep going. Like you said, you can't get lost on the property because as long as you're heading in a reasonably straight line, you're going to hit a boundary of some kind that's going to tell you you're at the edge, and knowing what edge you're at is going to tell you which way to go to get back to wherever you want to be. And some of that is an awareness of sort of the overarching map of having that picture in your head of, okay, the river runs on this side, the train tracks are run along this way, and this is where these roads flow, so that you know when you pop out on a road track, oh, well, okay, I need to head that way in order to get back to where I want to be. But we so often get ourselves so turned around trying to get to a goal, when if we would just continue taking small steps in a direction, we would end up where we want to be, probably with less effort in the long run, honestly.
Well, and it reminds me of one of the things that I teach when mountain biking is that you've got to be able to find your limits, right? If you don't know where your limits are, you can't go past them. And the example for me in that situation is a corner. Everyone's always afraid that they're going to fall off the edge of the corner, so they take the corner too tight. And it's actually really hard going uphill, not quite so hard going downhill, but uphill is when most people struggle with it. It's like they'll cut the corner too tight because they're afraid that they keep going in a straight line, they're going to fall off the end. And I encourage people, like, see if you can go in a straight line and actually fall off the edge of the corner. It's not going to happen because you'll get to that point and you'll turn in the direction that you need to do. And as I say, if you don't know where those limits are, if I didn't know that this property was bounded by the river and the train tracks and these roads, I might have actually felt lost. And what was really interesting right when I saw the train is I actually thought that I was running parallel to the train tracks. And I thought that I needed to turn in order to hit the train tracks. But in fact, I was walking straight towards them. However, had I turned, had I changed my trajectory a little bit to the right, I would have still hit the train tracks, but it would have taken me longer. Had I turned my trajectory slightly to the left, I would never have hit the train tracks. And if the train hadn't gone by, I would have gone the entire walk without seeing the train tracks. And if my destination was the train tracks, then that may or may not have been a problem, depending on which way I turned. But then after I saw the train, I was like, okay, so I turned slightly to the left, which made it so I was actually going parallel, which is what I was trying to do. Within moments, I popped out onto a road. Moments later, I was right back pretty much at my house. And I was so close. And at the moment when I saw the train, I still thought I was so far away from where I had started. And in fact, I was within a kilometer of where I had started from. It's so often that we give up. And on a fitness journey, it's like I stood on the scales yesterday, and I've been reluctant to stand on the scales because it hasn't been going anywhere. In fact, it was going up, and I was looking in the mirror going, no, there's more definition. No, I'm making progress. I feel better. I know I'm stronger. I can feel it in my body. Everything feels better. I can see it in the mirror. But I'd stand on the scales, and the scales were just sitting at that like 150, 151. And I'm like, how are you not going down? This isn't fair. And my husband's like, Tash, you know that muscle weighs more than fat. You know that you're replacing, and you're not doing like crazy calorie counting, and you're not doing starvation diet. Like, you are literally just doing your healthy diet. And you've just added that piece in there, right? So the piece of exercise, that's my experiment right now. Can I just add strength and exercise? And I stood on the scale, and it was solidly below the 150, like by 1 pound. But it was progress. And I was like, okay, now I've gone to the tipping. I've tipped past the replacing the fat and the muscle, and I'm now starting to move in that direction. But I had to hold the faith that if I just keep going, my goal right now is to get to the strength and back to feeling good in my body without going on a huge calorie deficit diet, and without counting my macros, and without doing anything other than strength, because it's the experiment that I currently want to do. And I eat really well. So I want to see if the diet I have right now just needed more exercise, right? And that was my boundary. That was my train. And I'm starting to see, like, right in front of me, trains going by. And that same thing when you're wanting to get better at biking, or you're wanting to build a business with the podcast, we are starting to see that we've moved to Substack. We are making concerted efforts to do certain things. We have a chat. If you subscribe to our Substack, you can join our chat. And what we do every day on our chat is we put our wins in. So at the end of the day, we put the 3 wins that we're celebrating of what we did today. And any of our subscribers are totally welcome to join in with this and start to hold yourself. It's not accountable to what you did in the day. It's actually the opposite. Because if you don't celebrate your wins at the end of the day, you don't feel like you did any. And the amount of times I sit down to write my wins, and I'm like, what are they? And I actually have to sit and think, what did I do that I can celebrate? And I always find them. My convoluted one of yesterday was very highly entertaining to Ginny. But it's really important, because that allows you to start to see that progress that you're making. And sometimes it's like you feel like you're not going anywhere, and then suddenly you're like, oh, right, okay, no, there's the train. It was right there in front of me.
Yeah. As you're talking, I'm realizing that I have a similar story. We had a very bad thunderstorm roll through one afternoon back when I was living in the state park. And it caused a lot of damage and actually injured a horse in the process. And so both of us were out at work and we're trying to run around checking on everything and trying to take care of this horse and make sure all the fences are still intact everywhere. And all of a sudden, I'm like out in the back, like this was about an 80 or 90 acre farm. And so I'm all the way on one side and my cell phone rings, and the guy I was dating at the time, who I was living with there, he's down in the field with this horse, trying to take care of this horse. And he goes, I can see smoke coming across the other field. And I'm like, you have got to be kidding me at this point. We don't have any vehicles that I can use to drive myself across the property because we were a nonprofit. That didn't exist. And so I now am in the back of the other side of the field and am now hoofing it all the way back across the farm to this big open field that was on the other side. And I look, and sure enough, I can see smoke coming out of the trees. And I'm panicking that there's a brush fire. It was a bad thunderstorm, lots of lightning, lots of thunder and everything, and wind. And so I hoof it into the brush. It's July in the mid-Atlantic, which means that everything is totally overgrown. And I am literally clawing my way, trying to follow this smoke back into the trees. And I finally find this big dead tree that's, it's not actively burning, but it was smoking pretty good. And I'm like, all right, well, guess I need to call the fire department too. Well, I turn around and I knew that I had not really been going, quote, straight into the woods, not perpendicular from the field. And so I turned around and started like whacking my way back out and realized I was like 10 yards into the bush. And I had literally like bushwhacked about 50 yards through the trees, not quite parallel to the field, but diagonally into the trees. And I'm like, well, that was definitely a lot more work than it could have been, but I had no way to know where the smoke was blowing from. So I'm hauling my rear end back across the farm to meet the fire truck so that they don't come in blazing with lights and sirens with injured horses. But it was a nightmare of a day, but it's the same thing, right? I was so much closer to where I needed to be on the outside than actually when I went into the trees.
Yeah.
And I expended so much more energy chasing something that I didn't realize was actually just right there. Yeah. And I probably should have observed my surroundings a little bit better, but I was already semi-exhausted from running across the farm several times. And so things happen and you just figure it out as you go along. But it's that same thing. It's like, that's the description of being in the weeds, right?
Totally.
Like that is exactly what it's like to be in the weeds, is just floundering around, wandering along. Even if you know you have boundaries, even if you know where some of the edges are, you're just wandering along. And if we aren't continuing to take steps, even in just a direction, pick a direction to work in, then we don't know where our success is going to be. And the other piece to that too is like you're talking about, you're choosing to focus on fitness right now. If we add too many layers to our lives in whatever our chosen thing is, fitness is an easy one. You could be focusing on calories and macros and don't eat this and only eat that and have this 3 times a day and do that and exercise and do yoga and do Tai Chi. When you start adding in too many things, you don't even know what worked in the first place.
Oh, totally.
So how do you know? How do you know at that point?
Yeah.
What is effective and what isn't? And so it's a lot easier when we find ourselves in the weeds to pick one thing to focus on or one direction to move in and stick with it long enough that we can know definitively if there are or aren't results.
Totally.
Because that window of time is a lot longer than we want to give it credit for. Like, I dare say you really need to stick with something new for probably 3 months.
3 months is pretty much it. If you're taking a new supplement, if you're changing your skincare, if you are working on a skill with your mountain biking, 100%, it's going to take 3 months.
3 months is probably the minimum, honestly.
Work on that cornering technique every time you go out for 3 months, and it'll probably happen faster. But having that as your boundary is I totally agree with you. And I think the other part of what everything you just said is taking the step back to see what it is that you need to focus on. Because if you had stopped for just a moment and taken a breath, figured out where you were, you may have realized that there was actually an easier way to get to the smoking tree. And that's exactly what you just said as far as the pick one thing and stick to it. It's like finances. You feel like you're in a complete mess. You have no idea where to go. Start with the budget for the next month, or start with reconciling the accounts from the last 6 months, or find an accountant. Do one thing. You're having trouble with your mountain biking. There's this concept of the wheel, right? That really works with everything, right? It's like you want to improve in your biking. Is it because you're not strong enough? You might have the best skills in the world, but if you don't have the strength to actually do the skill, it doesn't matter how good your skills are, it's not going to work. If you don't have good nutrition, you're going to keep bonking. It's working on each piece and figuring out which of the pieces of the pie is actually the most important. For me right now, back to my fitness, I know that I was 100% lacking in any sort of strength training. So that's where I need to focus. I do that for 3 months and we see where that gets us. And then we go, okay, that's not getting quite the results we need. Let's add in some nutrition, or let's go to the gym at least once a week and do some high intensive, or I'll buy some dumbbells or whatever. Where are you going to focus? Take a step back and focus on something so that you can find your way out of that spot. I could have looped around on my property for hours if I just kept on changing a degree in one direction, which was kind of what I wanted to do. I was really trying to see how lost I could get. I didn't achieve my goal. I have this other story I wanted to share with you that's more about perspective. The other night we had the full moon eclipse. Mm-hmm. And so I'm sitting.
It was cloudy here.
So I thought it was cloudy here, and then I looked out and I was like, no, that's not a cloud. That's actually the eclipse happening. So I'm like, no, clouds don't do that, right? And it was earlier than I thought it was. And so we have this amazing sunroom that looks exactly at the full moon. I said to my husband, I'm like, okay, I'm sorry, I got to go and watch this. So I went and I sat and I watched the moon disappear. And then I'm like looking out and there's this glow. And I'm like, is it possible that I could have the northern lights and the full moon eclipse? Could that possibly happen? So I'm kind of like, oh, maybe, right? And then I see this like crazy spike of white light goes up into the air. And I'm like, oh my God, this is so cool. And then it just went away. I'm like, what did I just see? And then I keep watching the moon, and a few moments later, I see this like spike of white light go up again. And I'm like, oh my God, is it really going to happen? Am I going to see the northern lights? Now, at this point, I'd just like to point out that I was not looking north at all. I was actually looking south. And once I orientated myself, I also realized that I was looking at the lights from the town of McBride. So, but what was even better was moments later, I see the train go by. So it was the lights of the train had come through an opening in the trees, and so they spiked up into the air and then disappeared back into the forest. And then a few moments later, it spiked again because it came out, and then it came around, and sure enough, back to my train stories. But it was so funny because I was in this moment of having this full-on like perception totally creates your reality.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it was like the UFOs were coming. I have no idea. But, as soon as I stepped back and thought about it, I'm like, Tash, A, you're looking south. You're looking at the town of McBride. B, that's the train light going by, because you can actually hear the train if you stop and observe what's going on and use all of your senses and use your intelligence and think about what's actually happening, there's no way you weren't going to see the Northern Lights sitting looking in this direction. Exactly the way as if I had been sitting on the other side of the house, I would have been like, what moon? There is no moon. There's no full moon eclipse happening right now. I might have been watching the Northern Lights, but I would not have been watching the eclipse. So I think to the same extent, right, we are so stuck in that perception of where we are, and if we allow ourselves to just stay in one mindset, we will be so close to achieving our goal. If my goal with fitness was to lose weight, I would have totally given up. But if I wasn't looking in the mirror and I wasn't like taking into account that I'm able to do exercises better than I could do them before, if my measuring stick was different, then again, if I was trying to see the Northern Lights and I was watching the moon, I would have been like, I don't know why the moon's going away. I thought the Northern Lights are supposed to be here tonight, right? And if your measuring stick is measuring something that you're not actually doing, you're not going to see the results. You're not going to see where you are. And you could have turned around and gone out of the woods in the same direction you came in and never realized that you were actually only a few steps from the edge of the paddock.
I would have drugged the firefighters through the woods at that point, because they had to come with hoses and like chainsaw. They cut it down and busted it open to make sure that nothing else was in it, because it was smoking, it was burning. Like I said, it wasn't like an external flame, but it was burning on the inside. So totally. I'm grateful that they were able to come and do that. But I think what's also key here is that it's making sure that our goal and our actions are in fact aligned, and that the goal itself is the most useful thing to be aiming for. Yeah. Because if you are working on your fitness journey and your goal is ultimately to lose weight, if that's all you're focused on, then you're going to miss all of the other signs of progress. And I know that I can even say that with going to the gym already. It's only been a month. We haven't even had a second bill yet from the Y. And yet, at the same time, I've noticed a few times I've gone to do the machines and I'm like, that seems too easy. Maybe I'll bump the weight up today. Or maybe I'll add more reps. And then there have been other moments where, for me, I've shared that my left leg and my right leg are not the same amount of strength. I just don't have the same amount of muscle mass. So one of the things I'm doing at the gym is focusing on exercises that are isolating my left leg, so my right leg's not cheating. And in doing that, I noticed the other day, I went to put my shoe on or something, and I was like, oh wow, I can just stand here on my left leg with more ease and longer than I used to be able to. It wasn't a balance issue. It was just a strength issue. Yeah. And when we're focused on a certain aspect of what we're doing that our goal is, if it's not looking for those small signs and the indicators that are really going to tell us we are moving in the right direction, then we're going to miss so much progress, and it becomes so much easier to be discouraged when all you're worried about is the number on the scale in that situation. And you're completely missing the rest of the signals that are happening that are telling you you are in fact moving in a direction.
Well, to kind of start to sum this up, it's very much align your actions with the goal and focus on that. If my goal was to lose 15 pounds as fast as possible, I should join a nutritional challenge and I should be eating 500 to 200 calories less a day. Then my calorie intake should be lower than my calorie output. And then I would very quickly see a difference in my weight and see a difference on the scale. However, if my goal is to get stronger, then I should be doing strength exercises and I should be working on getting stronger and getting muscles. if you're not doing the right activity, if you want to get better at mountain biking and your goal is to be able to climb up the hill faster, we're going to take a different strategy and a different approach than if you're wanting to get technically better at jumping and corners and your actual technical skills. There's going to be a different approach at going about it. If you're dealing with someone and their animals and they have a specific problem, like my question with Tiaki right now is there a issue with his back legs and is he in pain, or did we just run him too fast, right? So if I come to you with that question, you're going to have a completely different conversation with Tiaki than if I come to you and say, hey, can we have a conversation around the fact that he's barking at the vehicle every time? You and I are going to have a different conversation around my relationship with my dog. We're going to have a different conversation around what actions I need to take than if I present a convoluted equation to you. You're going to be like, well, hold on a second. Do you have a problem with your dog barking when you're running? Yeah. Or are you trying to deal with a pain issue? Because are we asking if he's barking when you're running because he's in pain? If you don't know the specifics of what we want to work on, you can't address the problem. Yeah. And then you'll end up in the weeds 100 meters away from the train tracks, and you'll never find them because you're not actually looking at the train tracks.
Yeah. Like the second piece of that puzzle to me is the fact that for your fitness example, if you're focusing on trying to lose weight and strength training, that's when you're starting to layer too many things on at one time, right? It's not that you can't do both, but your strategy is going to be very different. And that's the key, is like you can't just keep piling on this and this and this and this and this and expect that, number one, you're going to have a simple strategy, and number two, that you're going to be able to make progress in any given area that's consistent.
Your key indicators are so off because you're gaining strength, which means you're gaining muscle, which means that you're gaining weight, whilst at the same time you're trying to lose weight. So it's like, well, don't stand on the scale, get a tape measure out, measure. And you can't double these things up if you're wanting to see progress. And I think, as you said so succinctly, if you can take one thing, focus on it, make a plan that's logical towards that one thing, stick with it for 3 months, see where you're at, reassess, and then layer something else in on top. And then that way, you're not confused. You know what your expected results should be. If you focus on your business and you say, I would like to get more marketing, I want to get more visible, there's one strategy, right? I'm going to go on and every day I'm going to post on Substack. I'm not going to go and post on Instagram, Facebook, Substack, and LinkedIn, because if I have results, I'm actually not going to know which one of those 4 platforms gave me the results that I wanted. If I'm wanting to get coaching in a specific aspect, maybe I want to become better at meditating, journaling, meditating for 5 minutes, doing yoga, doing qigong, like doing all of those things. A, you're going to be overwhelmed, and who has the time for all of that? But B, you're not going to know. Sometimes journaling is the key for people. It unlocks everything. Sometimes sitting still for 5 minutes is the key for people. It unlocks everything. You know, your finances, sometimes just having a budget and not even worrying about what happened in the past, but just budgeting where you are right now and moving forward in that budget is all you have to do. Sometimes you need to go backwards and you don't need a budget. But if you go backwards and you figure out your past spending, maybe that's all you have to do. If we make it too complicated, we don't see any progress and we end up walking around in circles. And sometimes just taking that 2-degree shift, pointing in a direction and going that way, you're going to get to the result that you want to get to.
Yeah. I love it.
So thank you so much for joining us for this rather interesting format of our podcast today. If you would like to join us in our daily wins, all you have to do is go into Substack, subscribe, and you can jump into our chat and join that chat at any time. I highly, highly recommend it. It's been super, super helpful. I'm still not 100% with it, but I am mostly with it, which I'm quite proud of myself. Ginny is keeping us on track as always, as she does on the show and with everything. It's always helpful to have a friend like Ginny. So yeah, come and join the fun with us there. And if this episode has been helpful to you, please share it with somebody. And also comment, like, share. Let us know how this landed for you. We would love to hear from you. I am Natasha Lockey. I am a life and mountain bike performance coach. I am all about helping you find that focus so that you can not feel lost, so that when you get stuck in the weeds, you know how to get out of them really, really quickly, whether you are mountain biking, whether you are starting a business. These are the things that I specialize in. And also if you're just wanting to really pursue a dream and you don't know if it's possible, it is. So reach out to me. I'm Natasha at Betty Go Hard on Instagram. I'm Natasha Lockey on Facebook, and you can find me on Substack, Natasha Lockey as well. All right, Ginny.
Yeah, I'm Ginny Brandon. I'm an animal communicator and energy healer for animals and their people too. If you are interested in getting a little bit more perspective from your pet on their life and what's going on, or if you're having behavioral or emotional challenges, that is a great reason to have a session together. So you can find me on the web at soulpetconnections.com and on Substack, Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube under the same handle. So again, we appreciate having you here with us today on this ride through the weeds, and we look forward to seeing you next time.
And I'm just going to add one last thing. This episode was brought to you today by my Trinont Wellness products. And I say that because without the collagen that I take, there is absolutely no way I would be out being able to walk and get lost in the weeds. The Trinont line of products is amazing. Their collagen is 90% absorbable. It really helps with joints. It helps with your gut health, helps with mental health. And they've also just released a For Her product, which if you are in a perimenopausal or going into menopause or suffering through menopause, the supplement that they have just released is literally reversing people's menopause and changing their lives. So if any of that is interesting to you, again, reach out to me and I can tell you more about that product. The products that they have, highly recommend. It's definitely worth taking a look if you are struggling with lots of different health issues. As we age as women, it is just so amazing to see so many of these hormone supports that are coming available to us. We don't have to suffer anymore. All right, thanks for listening.